Wouldn't it be awesome if there was a small little electric boat? You could just drive it around, catch some fish, cook some food, and when the sun goes down, you can hunker down, get cozy to enjoy a beautiful night on the water? Well, I sure thought so, so that's why I made it. And in this video, I'm going to show you every step it took to make mine. Then we're going to take it out for a beautiful night on the water. And you'd never guess, it all started with a whole bunch of foam. I decided to get this 2-inch thick XPS insulation foam for the build of the boat because it's lightweight, it comes in large sizes, and it should be perfect to build out the frame. I lay out one piece of foam and I take some construction adhesive and I apply it to the surface of the board. Then I take a little plastic spreader and I spread it out to give it a nice even coat. I take another board and I lay it over the top. I place it down slowly and squish it down with some force. With the foam boards drying in the background, it's time to cut up and process the other pieces of foam. I pull out a jigsaw and I attach a special blade, and it makes quick work of the foam without making a whole bunch of mess. And the pieces I just cut out are for the side walls of the boat. I take more of the foam and I begin to cut and process it to make the other pieces of the boat, like the piece for the back of the boat. I then cut out the pieces for the front of the boat so that I can glue them and lay them on top of each other. Then I cut out a few more pieces, and when I lay them out and lift it up, we can see how the shapes fit together. But we're still going to need something to hold it together, so that's where this comes in. I'm going to be gluing it with this expanding spray foam. I lay a bead of it along the back of the wall. I lift up the back piece, I squish it down, and I hold it in place with some duct tape I placed there earlier. I lay some more beads of the spray foam along the long edge of the boat. I take the wall, I squish it down over the foam, and I stick it in place with the duct tape as well. I head over to the other side, repeating the process, sticking the other wall in place. I grab myself some bamboo skewers that I go around to certain areas of the boat. I squish them through to hold the pieces of foam together, just to give it a little extra grip as everything dries. I head over to the front of the boat, where I spray foam and attach the pieces on the front, holding it together with some duct tape as well. I take some more spray foam and other pieces of foam to finish building out the front, holding it in place with some duct tape and skewers. I then begin to work on the top part of the boat by cutting out a rectangle that I can pop out. I grab some spray foam and begin to build out a structure that's going to later be the place where I can hold my battery to power my boat. After letting it dry for a while, I lift it up and take it over to the front, making sure it fits. Then I go ahead and add some spray foam and attach it with some duct tape and skewers. And now for the part that's going to later hold on the pontoons. I got a long piece of this structural metal tubing. I slip on these little adapters on the ends that I go ahead and tighten down with an Allen wrench. And then I take a piece of wood that I drilled a couple holes in earlier and I attach it with some bolts. I head over to the other side and I attach a piece of wood just the same. I then lift up the pieces I just attached to the pole and I set it down so I can make it more permanent. I take out my little welder and I begin to put in a couple spot welds just to make sure that this pipe never rolls or moves around when it's on the boat. While I wait for the piece of metal to cool down, I head back over to the frame of the boat where I begin to pick off and remove all of the extra foam and remove all of the duct tape, just leaving a nice foam frame. With the metal now nice and cool, I go ahead and lift it up and place it on something I can work on, and I grab myself a small roll of fiberglass woven fabric. I cut off some lengths of it and I begin to wrap it around all of the length of the wood, and this is going to be for later on in the build when I'm fiberglassing the boat. It's going to really help fuse these pieces to the boat. I cut out some small strips of the fiberglass and I tie it on each of the ends just to keep the thing from unrolling. I lift up the piece and I go ahead and place it back on the boat. I take some more of the fiberglass cloth and I wrap it around the metal pole as well, tying it off on each of the ends to keep it from unrolling. And now it's time to install the small wall that's going to go in the front. I take a bunch of spray foam and I spray it all around the perimeter and I go ahead and push the wall into place. Since I'm working with a whole bunch of foam, I decided to get myself a small little hot wire cutter, which makes cutting it super easy. So I took the wire cutter and I taped it along with a piece of wood as a guide rail so that I can take some long pieces of foam, feed it through it, and give myself some really nice long clean cuts. I took the pieces I just cut out and I headed over to the corners where I attached them with some spray foam to give it a little bit of strength, and I think it's going to make it a little bit easier when I'm fiberglassing it later. After it all dried, I went around and picked up all of the extra foam and used a hobby knife to clean it up. And there we have it. The basic frame and shape of our boat. Now for the fun part, fiberglass and epoxy. I'm using epoxy resin for this project because I know it won't melt or mess up the XPS foam. And I'm also going to be using a couple types of fiberglass for the top, like this is a stranded mat. And I also have a large woven fabric as well. So it's time to don the safety gear and get ready. Let's go. I begin by rolling out a length of the chopped stranded mat. I cut it off with some scissors and I place it in the bottom of the boat. I go around to the corners and I put in some cuts just so that they lay nice and flat. Time to mix up some epoxy. I'm going to be mixing the ratios by weight because it's supposed to be more accurate, so I pour out some of the epoxy, then some of the hardener. I pour them both into a mixing container and I mix it with an electric drill and a little paint stirrer. And there it is, the first batch. It begins. I head to the back of the boat where I take a paint roller and I begin to apply the epoxy, saturating out the fabric, completely coating the layer, making sure the epoxy soaked all the way through. I then took some lengths of wood and began to evenly space them along the floor of the boat. I took some of that thinner fiberglass roll I used earlier, placed it over each of the lengths of wood, and stuck it in place with a whole bunch more epoxy. I took another layer of the stranded mat and laid it over top, and I soaked that with epoxy all the way through. And I put another layer of the thinner fiberglass cloth over the wood as well. And I'm not trying to get strength from the wood, but I'm trying to get strength from the tubes of fiberglass forming around the wood. I take some large sheets of the stranded mat and begin to lay it over the sides of the boat. I take some of the epoxy and I saturate both of the side walls. I roll out some of the large woven mat, cut it to length, and lay it over each of the sides, and brush on some more epoxy. I give the same treatment to the back wall by saturating a layer of the chopped mat, then I add a layer of the woven fabric on top. I lay in some more layers of the chopped fabric all over the sides and the front of the boat, followed by some more epoxy and another layer of the woven fabric on top. I then head over to the corners where I build up some layers of the chopped stranded mat, followed by some layers of the woven fabric and some extra layers to build up strength around the edge. And I did the same thing for the other corner. For the inside corners, it's a pretty similar process. Some layers of the chopped stranded mat, followed by some large sheets of the woven fabric to give it some extra strength and layers. And I did it for both sides on the back. Now for the front part of the boat. I build up some layers of the chopped stranded mat, followed by building out the inner corners just like I did with the back ones. After one more layer of the stranded mat, I put on a large sheet of the woven fabric to finish it off. And since I'm planning on sleeping on this thing, I decided to add one more layer of the chopped stranded mat on the floor, followed by a couple additional pieces for strength on the edges. And lastly, a giant sheet of the woven fabric to give it a nice surface skin. And now for the front, where I lay on a whole bunch of layers of the chopped stranded mat, cutting around where the battery's gonna go, covering it all with epoxy, and then building out the battery compartment with a whole bunch of layers of the chopped stranded mat. I ended up putting a couple more layers on top, just to give it some extra strength. I headed over to the front where I began to build up some layers of the stranded mat on the front part as well. I took a couple more pieces of mat and began to build out the rest of the frame where there's any bare spots, followed by some large sheets of the woven fabric just to give it some nice surface skin. And the top part is finally finished. Time to let it dry. And in the meantime, let's build the pontoons. I took some pieces of XPS foam I cut out earlier, and I used some spray foam to begin to build out the rough shape of each of the pontoons. I took some duct tape and used it to hold it in place as the foam dried. And I did the same thing for the other one. After letting them dry for a while, it was time to go around and take off all of the duct tape and remove all of the extra foam that's sticking off the sides. And for how we're going to attach it to the boat, I have another piece of the structural tubing that I measure, mark, and begin to cut it with a pipe cutter. And I have another set of adapters that fit on the pipes that you tighten with an Allen key. And I cut out a few small pieces of wood with some holes in them that I go ahead and attach with some bolts through the adapters and tighten them down. And once again, I want to make sure that these never fall out, so I pull out the welder and I put in a couple spot welds just to keep them in place to keep them from rotating or ever falling out. I take the two pieces over to the pontoons, I line them up in the center, and I push them down so that the bolts poke some little holes in it. And the next step is to take our pontoons, take our little wire cutter, and go around and cut off all the sharp edges so it makes it a little bit easier to fiberglass later. After doing it to both of the pontoons, I pulled out a sander and gave them a nice little rough sanding just to clean off any extra foam sticking out and really smooth them out. And they turned out great. These things are even, they look great, they feel great, they're nice and solid, and they're ready for some fiberglass. I began by building up some small strips around the 4 holes that I poked in earlier, soaking them with epoxy and building up a couple layers. I then took the metal and wooden poles I worked on earlier and I placed them inside of the 4 holes that I poked in on each pontoon. I took some small strips of the fiberglass fabric and began to wrap it around the wooden metal pole, followed by a layer of the chopped stranded mat on each side. I then built up and reinforced the area which I'm going to attach the motor to later with a whole bunch of chopped matting, followed by some large sheets of the woven fabric covering all of the top surface on each of the pontoons. And after giving it some time to dry, the next day the top parts were nice and hard and ready for the bottom coating. I made a special stand out of wood to hold the pipes upside down so it gives me a little bit easier time as I want to fiberglass the bottoms. I take some layers of the chopped stranded matting and lay it on top, soak it with epoxy, and lay on some large sheets of the woven fabric to finish it off. I go ahead and do the same thing for the other pontoon, and I leave them both to dry overnight. And the next day, with the pontoons nice and dry, I take them off the stand, I flip them over, and I give them the old strength test by standing on it with all my weight just to see if they crack or anything. And these things are super strong. There's no way they're going to break when I'm using them. The only thing left to fiberglass now is the bottom of the boat. So it's time to flip this thing over on the other side, remove the duct tape and clean off any of the debris. I take a roll of the stranded mat and I roll it over the length of the boat. I cut the corners so that they'll fold nice and even. And I roll out another length of the mat on the other side of the boat. And since I want the bottom to be extra strong, I got another type of fiberglass mat. It's called biaxial fiberglass and it should be much stronger than the other types. I mixed up some more epoxy and I begin to spread it all over the chopped fiberglass matting. I add another large piece on the front of the boat and I add some extra pieces around the corners, cutting them so they fit nice and flush just to add some extra strength. And now it's time to roll out the huge sheet of the biaxial fiberglass. I cut it to length and I went around with a whole bunch of epoxy, completely saturating it and attaching it to the rest of the boat. I took some more of the biaxial fiberglass and laid it on each of the edges and glued them on down. I took another large piece of the biaxial, I laid it over the front, cutting the edges so they lay nice and smooth. After adding on some more epoxy, I headed to the back corners where I put on a couple more pieces of the biaxial, sticking them down and making sure that they're nice sharp corners. I took some long lengths of wood I cut out earlier and I laid them on the edges and also in the middle, using a tape measure to make sure that they're nice and parallel. I rolled out some of the smaller fiberglass rolls over each of the sides. I then add a layer of the chopped stranded mat over each of them as well. And I do the exact same treatment to the middle beam. And for the final layer of fiberglass, I go around the sides with some of the woven fabric. I lay a large sheet along the middle of the boat. I take another large piece over the back part of the boat, some smaller pieces along the corners, and then one more large piece of the woven fiberglass on the front of the boat. And the fiberglassing is finally done, and I can finally breathe again. After letting the epoxy dry for a couple days, I can finally see how strong it is. I go ahead and sit on the bottom of the boat. The thing's as solid as a rock, and I couldn't be happier. So, next step, let's get some paint on it. I give the boat a rough sanding just to make sure that the paint sticks, and I'm using a special 2-part epoxy paint for the bottom of the boat. I pour both of the parts in a mixing container and mix them up to make sure it's nice and smooth. I grab myself a paint roller and begin to paint a nice thick coat along the bottom of the boat, and this is a special waterproof paint. I take the remainder of the white paint and I head over to the pontoons where I paint the bottom half of those as well. And the next day, when the paint's nice and dry, it's time to flip this thing over so I can paint the top half of the boat. After giving the boat a nice little sanding, it was time to go around with some painter's tape and leave a nice clean line along the edge. I hopped inside of the boat with some yellow paint, and this is a 1-part epoxy paint that's normally used for a garage floor, and I thought it would be perfect for the inside of the boat. I also used it on the part where the battery's going to be held. For the remainder of the boat, I decided to use a yellow topside paint. It's made for boats, and it should be perfect for riding along the water, and it's going to look pretty sweet as well. I laid out a piece of cardboard and I grabbed the pontoons so that I could take the remainder of the yellow paint and give them a nice yellow coat on top of everything. After letting everything dry for a bit, it was time to remove the painter's tape to give myself the nice yellow and white clean lines all around the boat. And with the paint job done, I think it turned out looking fantastic. Couldn't be happier. The next step is to build the base that's going to hold our sunshade, and I'm using PVC pipe and PVC joints. I pull out a large T-square and I begin to measure, mark, and cut all of the PVC pipes to the lengths I need. I then take some PVC cement and I begin to glue all of the joints together, forming the base of the structure that's going to hold our sunshade and making sure that it's never going to come apart. And working with PVC pipe is super easy and you can make some really strong shapes. I lift up the structure and I place it inside the bottom of the boat. But right now, the floor isn't super comfy, and I want to change that. So I got myself a bunch of these 1-inch thick gym puzzle mats that fit together, and these are super nice. They fit together like puzzle pieces, so I take them and lay out the basic shape of the floor. I take the T-square, I line it up with the edge, I take a large utility knife, and I cut off all of the extra. I take the extra pieces I just cut off, and I lay them throughout the base of the floor just to raise them up above the PVC pipe and wooden beams. I lift up the floor mat and I place it inside the boat, pushing it down underneath the PVC pipe, making sure it's nice and flat. And now there is some super comfy foam floor that's way better than the fiberglass. I take the remaining pieces of PVC pipe I cut out earlier and I begin to assemble the rest of the structure for the sunshade. I take an extra piece of foam tile, I cut it out and fit it in for where the battery's gonna go. And speaking of battery, it's time to start working on the electronic system. For controlling the motors on the boat, I have 2 of these drum switches, which are going to be perfect for reversing the direction of them. I also have these 2 toggle switches, which will control the lights and also the accessories. And for turning the boat on and off, I have this large battery cutoff switch. So it's time to start wiring it up. I crimp on some ring terminals that are going to later connect to the battery. On the other end of the wire, I take a splitter and I also take some ring terminals and I crimp them on so I can connect it up to the battery cutoff switch. And we have it wired up so we can disconnect the power to the motors, and you can see it runs through a splitter so we can connect it to the 2 motors later. There's also an inline fuse in the wire, which is really nice to help prevent any shorting. And now it's time to extend some wires. I crimp on some green extension cord to lengthen the splitters so that they're long enough to connect to the drum switches. I take a screwdriver and I unscrew one of the switches to reveal all the terminals, and all these do is just reverse the polarity. I crimp on some connectors on the wires coming from the splitter so I can feed it in the back of the switch and attach it to the correct terminals. I take a new piece of wire and I feed it through the back and I tighten it down to the output terminals. I close up the lid and I screw it back in place. On the other end of the output, I want to attach an easy connector, so I go ahead and crimp it on, and now we have a super easy way to connect and disconnect our motors. I head over to the other side where I open up the other drum switch and hook it up just the same. I take a Sharpie and mark where I want the switches to go. I take out a Dremel with the wire brush and grind off the area I marked out, revealing the epoxy. I cleaned it off, I grabbed myself some 5-minute epoxy, and I mixed it up and placed it on the area I just grinded off. I picked up the drum switch and squishing it down, then I put a heavy hammer on it to let it dry. I added some epoxy to the other side, squishing down the switch and putting on another hammer. I measured the center so I could mark, grind, and glue the power cutoff switch, then I put a hammer on it. And the last part of the controls is the switch for the lights and the accessories. I took some lengths of extension cord and I attached them to the terminals on the switches and closed it on up. And all the switches that I'm using claim to be water resistant. I place the switch where I want it, I mark it, grind it, glue it, and put a hammer on it to let it dry. Time to light up the boat. I measure the center on the front, then mark and glue the light down. I head over to the back with the other light and I measure, mark, and glue that light down as well. I head on back to the front where I put on some ring terminals that will connect the switches to the battery. And speaking of battery, we're going to need to modify this box so we can attach some wires through it. And I want to have the wires go through these cable glands. So I mark where they're going to go, I take out a Dremel, and I begin to grind away the area. I feed the cable glands through the holes and I put on the nuts on the other side. And now we're going to have a clean way to get our wires in to connect to the battery. Beautiful. Time for some cable management. I got some of this yellow split tubing that I'm going to put over the wires that are going to connect to the lights, and I have some of these small sticky pads and also some little zip ties that I stick underneath the split tubing so I can zip tie it down, trim off the little extra bits, and have a nice cable management. I take the wire running from the switch to the backlight, cover it in split tubing, and zip tie it to the wall all the way back there. I solder the wires to the light and attach it to the wall. I can now take the battery box and place it in its little home. I feed the wire ring terminals to each of the cable glands so I can attach it to the battery. I drop in a 12-volt battery. I also throw in a little desiccant pack, and then I go ahead and attach all of the terminals to the battery. Then I close it on up. I hit the switch for the lights, and we can see I have a red and green light in the front and a white light in the back. Awesome. I grab the pontoon and I place it by the structural pipe, and I'm going to attach it to the boat with these little structural clamps. I slip them over each of the pipes and I tighten them down with an Allen key, and I can adjust them when I'm out on the water, and they're going to keep the pontoons nice and stable. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and take them off because we still need to attach some motors to them. And for the motors, I have two of these 18-pound thrust trolling motors. I unscrew the clamps and I place it over the pontoons, tightening it down in place. I attach the motor to the other pontoon just the same. I grab some storage containers that I place the pontoons on top of so I can drop both of the motors down and give them a full test. But right now they still have these little clamp connectors which I don't want because I want to replace them with this. I cut the quick connects in half, I cut off the old connectors, and I crimp on the new ones instead. So now we can attach it to our drum switches. I bring the wires over to the boat and I plug them into the ends of the drum switches. I head over to the controls where I flip the switch for the power. I activate one of the drum switches to test out the motors. And it's super easy to control, works like a charm. I can control both motors at the same time. I can have them going in opposite directions, the same direction, or just one at a time. Awesome. And the only major component left to add is the sunshade. And yes, this is a piece of a tarp from the teepee I made in the forest, and it's also a leftover piece from when I made my little camper. So it's going to be perfect for the boat. I throw it over the top of the PVC structure, lining it up and cutting off the extra. I step inside with a Sharpie and begin to mark a couple places in the corners by the PVC. I pull the tarp back down so I can lay it flat on the ground, find the marks I made, and hammer in some little grommets. I go around to the other marks and put a grommet in each spot. I place it back over the PVC structure. I take some yellow cord and I tie the tarp down to the structure. And would you look at that, we finally finished our boat build. But there's still one more part to add, and that is a proper name along the back side of the boat. The SS Cheddar. Let's go. And now the only thing left to do is to take this thing out for a night on the water. And with the help of my uncle, we loaded the boat up on his trailer so we could take it over the lake and drop the thing on off. And after a few minutes of setup, it was finally time to flip the power switch and take this thing out on the water. Let's have some fun. Well, here we are. We're in the middle of a lake on our little homemade camper boat powered by two small little trolling motors, and this thing is awesome. So here we are, all loaded up with gear. I ended up reusing these little wall hanger things that I've used on my other camper builds in the past, and I have them on each side. You can see here I have a little bit of manual backup power in case I need it, but the battery that I brought should last for around 5 hours of just continuous use, which is more than enough. I decided to bring out my big flashlight again, bunch of food and stuff in this bottom container right here. Got a life jacket over here, got a sleeping mat over there. Behind it you can see I have a solar panel. I have another thing of camera gear back there, sleeping bag and this. But this thing turned out awesome, and I'm really happy that I ended up using the yellow tarp as a sunshade because it is very bright out right now. But it's a beautiful day, it really is. We're gonna be spending the night on our little camper boat. This thing is awesome. It's powered by trolling motors, and they're each independently controlled by these switches. This one goes forward, you can see we're turning left. This is off, and if I flip it backwards, it's gonna send us into reverse on the left side. So that does mean that we do have the capability to kind of do full 360. So if I send this one backwards and this one forward, the boat's just gonna start spinning like this, is what you can see right now. But yeah, we're just doing 360s right now. You can see here, I got my fishing pole out here, and this is honestly pretty good fishing leg, so I'm hoping that we catch some fish out here today. So our first fishing spot is we're gonna head over here to this end and try to go fishing. And the breeze is actually picking up a little bit. It's trying to blow us a little bit to the side. You can actually hear the water going underneath the boat. We're actually picking up a little bit of speed here. Probably just a couple miles an hour, but this is pretty cool. Just cruising along in my little homemade boat. This thing's pretty awesome. And I really like these controls. We're slowly making our way over to the fishing spot. It's a beautiful day though, it really is. So this is a pretty good fishing spot. I fished here like once or twice in the past, so let's see how we do today. It's kind of fun to steer with these things, to be honest. Just like little switches. I think most people use these on like a lathe or like a something like that. You can reverse real easily. I think they work pretty good for this. All right, let's drop anchor right here. And I got this crazy looking kind of grapple hook looking anchor, which is pretty cool. Let's tie this up like kind of like this, just so the breeze doesn't take us everywhere. I did also bring this, which is just a nice flexible solar panel. It's 100 watts supposedly, and I'm actually going to take the solar panel and we're going to put it on top, the little sunshade right here, and then the cord's coming off of the solar panel, and plug it into this, which is a small little solar charge controller. And we can take this solar charge controller, and then this extra switch right here actually is a free one, so I can plug other things into it like a solar panel and things like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and connect it to here, and it should start charging up our battery. And then I'm going to hit the switch, and we can see right there we're charging the battery at 13 volts and 1 amp. So we're already putting back energy into our little battery right here. Let's enjoy some fishing as we get some juice in our battery. All right, so today I'm going to use one of my favorite lures, which happens to be purple worm, and these ones are really good, the 3 hooked ones. Take a little weight. I decided to bring this board because we are going to count how many fish we catch. All right, we got the purple worm. Let's see what we can do. You can see right there, there's a couple fish. Curious about it. Oh wow, he just jumped on right out of the water. Oh, almost caught one. Doesn't count unless you get it on the boat. We're bound to catch something. Sadly, I don't think this weed counts as a fish. Let's try a massive spoon. I have a huge spoon. Let's try this big old thing. You can see down here though, these little fish are just watching. Nothing but weeds. All right, so let's go head over here. Might be a decent spot. Just kind of cruising along. Got the motors just churning down there, both sides. So I'm thinking right over here, there's got to be some fish. Huh, not even a nibble. I am not having much luck fishing, so let's pull up anchor and head on to a new spot. Just gently going along. You can see how kind of fast we're going as we pass these buoys. Not too fast, but this thing's actually going. Actually, it seems like it's pretty deep over here, so maybe let's try to do a little bit of fishing right here. Alright, it's time to head on back to the other area we're fishing at. And soon we're gonna make ourselves some dinner. Starting to get pretty hungry. Doesn't get better than this. Hanging out on a homemade boat, fishing, about to spend the night out in the water. But yeah, this is pretty sweet. The boat's just kind of gently crawling along. We have the two motors down here on each side, and all while the solar panel is charging this thing. 5.5 amps at 13 volts, charging back up the battery, which is actually really good. The water's just like glass right here. I don't know if you saw that. There was this bee hanging out in the water. I don't think he could get out. I think he needed to dry off, so I picked him up on the lure. I'll just let him hang out here. He's gonna dry off here, then hopefully he'll go fly off somewhere. Well, hey, I caught a bee on a lure, which is new. I've never done that. No fish today, but so far we caught a bee. All right, well, we're back at the spot where I've caught fish before, so hopefully now we'll catch some fish. And we also have a new buddy aboard, Mr. B. Hopefully he dries up and decides to fly on soon, otherwise he might just become co-captain of this thing. The bee just decided to fly away. Go make some honey or something. Well, no luck yet. And I'm honestly starting to get pretty hungry, so I think it's going to be time to make some dinner out here. I'm going to be having some spicy seafood ramen. And I also decided to bring this Orange Dream soda. Pretty good. Well, I have a tiny little pocket stove, and I got a small little canister of gas. And I forgot I have some like chives and a jalapeno that I'm going to toss in there as well. Should be pretty good. And in the meantime, let's mix in the soup base. Ooh, when that sun comes out, it's really hot out here. Got the soup going. I'm just literally floating along in my little tiny boat. And it's interesting, when I'm cooking, I kind of forget I'm like floating. I'm just kind of focused on cooking. And then I remember I'm on a little boat I made. But yeah, we're gonna have some delicious soup, some spice and onions, some mackerel. It's gonna be very delicious. Go ahead and toss in our noodles. Let's toss in our spices as well. And then we also got our mackerel. Hopefully this isn't the only fish we see today. Oh, that's gonna be so good. What a beautiful day. Hanging out in the homemade little camper boat. Cooking some delicious soup, stew, ramen, whatever you want to call it. Just perfect out here, and I'm really happy with how the SS Cheddar turned out. It's a beautiful day, and it doesn't get better than this. And this soup is looking mighty tasty as well. I think it's about ready. Look at that. It's about to be delicious. Ooh, that's real hot. Splashes on me, it burns. Oh, that's beautiful. Manja, this looks so good. Well, here we are. We're in the middle of a lake on a little homemade boat, and I'm gonna spend the night on it. This thing is sweet. It was a lot of work, and I'm really excited how it came out, and I'm really hungry as well. Let's try this soup first. Ooh, it's like 1,000 degrees. Very good. It really is a beautiful day for this. There's not really any breeze going on right now. I'm just kind of floating in one spot. I do have the anchor thrown in there, but we're not even pulling on it. We're just kind of hovering here, which is really nice. This thing is very stable. I can stand wherever I want. I don't even have to worry about it tipping. The little outriggers and the pontoons keep it from tipping as well. Right now, the battery's being charged up by the solar panel I got on the roof, giving about an amp right now. It's pretty awesome. It's just passively charges as I'm just hanging out, which I do love. But yeah, this thing was a lot of work to make. I think it was my longest project to make, mostly because I kept running out of epoxy. I kept having to order more and more epoxy. I didn't realize how much it was going to use. It's super solid. This thing is like it's like a rock, but it's very buoyant. It barely sinks in the water. I could definitely fit a couple more people on here and take them out fishing if I wanted to. I think it took me 2 to 3 weeks to make the boat. Never done anything with fiberglass before, and I've always wanted to, and I thought this would be a perfect project to start with, to make a sweet little boat like this. I love the colors of it. The thing floats. I like the floor of it. It's really comfy, a lot comfier than just fiberglass itself. And I'm excited to actually just roll out the sleeping bag and mat and sleep on here at the end of the night and see if I even realize I'm floating on the water. Like right now, it's just so calm. The water's like glass. I don't even realize I'm out here unless I kind of look up, which is interesting. And apparently this was an old quarry that got flooded or something, or they flooded. I'm not sure, but it used to be an old like mining quarry where people used to mine, and supposedly my uncle was telling me if you scuba dive over there, you can find a road that was underneath here, and you can find some old equipment that was left behind, which would be pretty cool. It'd be sweet if I had a little like ROV to kind of go check it out, but I don't. And I also have some orange cream soda. Very good. Eating some delicious ramen soup on just such a calm day on the lake in my little homemade camper. This thing is just so cool, and I'm so happy with how it came out. I'm still hopeful I'll catch a fish out here. I'd really like to catch a fish on my little homemade boat. Oh, something just jumped out there. Something pretty big actually just jumped out there. I know this is the spot. I'm gonna finish up dinner and hopefully we'll catch a fish. That'd be pretty cool. Cheers. What a beautiful day. Oh no, is that water in the corner? Oh wait, no, never mind. That's just an island. Down it goes. And hopefully we'll catch a fish. I really want to catch one. Cast into the sun. You see him down there? The little guy? Ooh, he did a little spin around. Oh my gosh, he bit the line, but he didn't bite the worm. Today might not be the day. Oh, Nelly. Is this finally the moment? We don't have it in yet. Oh, huzzah! We have caught a nice bass. All right, buddy, don't freak out on me. I need my pliers. I knew there were some pretty big fish in here. You're the first check mark of fish we caught today. Back in you go. Into the deep. We can finally add fish number 1. Beautiful. Oh yeah. The fish seem to be out now. Look at this boy. Bass number 2. Look at this guy. It seems the fish have definitely started to bite now as it's starting to get later in the day. We're starting to make some progress. Can you say fish number 2? We are making progress. Holy moly, that's a huge one. Oh my gosh, look at that thing. I don't know if I've ever seen one that big. What is that? I think a sunfish? That's crazy. I thought there was a bass. These ones you gotta be careful because they got the little pointy bits. I don't know if I've ever seen one this big. Is he 10? He's like 10 inches. That's crazy. He's a big boy. All right, off you go. We are on fire right now. I've caught these fish in the last like 2 minutes. All right, let's see what else we can do. I'm gonna move a little bit closer to the shoreline again. We keep drifting a little bit. I guess dusk is when they feed this time of year. Oh, we have something on here. And it is fighting. It's funny, it pulls the boat. Oh, look at this thing. Is that the biggest one yet? I don't even know. Look at this beast. This is a big fish. We're doing really good right now. This seems to be the spot. And it's funny, when I catch a fish like this and I'm not anchored down, totally pulls the boat. Okay, let's send this guy back into the water. See you later. Got 4 fish. Doesn't get better than this. Just driving my little homemade boat. I'm gonna spend the night on it. It's a beautiful day. Caught some big fish. Still got a little bit left of the sun. It's really just a lovely day out right now, and I couldn't ask for a better day. By the way, I think it's time to turn off our solar panel. Most of the sun is down. We're only getting about like 0.1 amps. And I also made it so at night, when I'm not using the solar panel, I can go ahead and plug in this thing. And this is just a little USB-C and USB slot. Yeah, just like this. And you turn it on, tells you the voltage, and you can turn this thing on and off, and you can charge up your phone or whatever you want. That's why I left this as just a plug, so I can plug in a solar panel, and at night I can plug in other things, or really plug in other things in the future. It's honestly really nice to just cruise around. Probably just gonna go around, do a little loop, and then head on back to where I was doing most of my fishing today and got lucky with it. Just gliding through the water, and I love how it reflects everything. It's like 2 worlds. And I'm feeling like I'm gonna anchor up around here and sleep here for the night, and maybe try some night fishing, which would be pretty cool. Starting to get cool. I'm glad I brought that sweatshirt and a pretty nice sleeping bag. Well, I'm excited to get comfy on this thing tonight though. I think I'm pulling up in on where I want to sleep for the night. And then, there we go. Now, when I'm sleeping, I don't have to worry about running into shore or anything. I'll just kind of bounce around this whole area right here. And we can still do a little bit of night fishing, which is something I want to try out in this area. It is starting to get chilly. I'm happy I brought this sweatshirt, and I brought a pretty nice sleeping bag too. I think it's time to relax, maybe have a little snack and just set up for the night. Yeah. And I think I'm just gonna stack up my containers and put them in the front. Well, this is gonna be my view for the night, and you can see there's a couple pieces of duct tape. I brought some duct tape out here, and I kind of put it on the edges just so it doesn't flap away in the wind. You can see my solar panel up there. It's kind of just hanging out for the night. I have more than enough room to lay out and stretch out both my feet and my head. If I didn't see the tree line moving in the background, I would forget that I'm on the water. I'm definitely excited to get some sleep in here tonight. It's a really calm day. Perfect night for this. Starting to get dark out, and I'm starting to get hungry for a little snack. And I ended up bringing this right here. This is like a civilian MRE, and I got this just in case, for whatever reason, if I couldn't cook on here with a little stove, or I knocked it over or something. It's always good to just have some backup food. So let's see what we got going on here. Pasta and garden vegetables and tomato sauce. Mystery bladder. This is either banana apple smoothie or sweet potato grape smoothie. And then this is like a snack. Let's have a smoothie and have this little chocolate crisp protein bar. Sounds pretty good to me. I think it's time to hit the lights. Got my lantern going, got the boat lights on as well. Got myself some sort of smoothie, and let's give it a taste. It's not my favorite, to be honest. Oh my gosh, it is just dark. It tastes like chocolate protein powder. I definitely like it way better than the smoothie though. I haven't really sat over here in the back yet. It's starting to get wet. It feels wet, like the moisture. I guess it cooled down that much. I haven't really got to admire the back of the boat too much today. I've been really just hanging out in the front by the steering wheel and catching fish up there. But it's nice, and I like how stable this boat is. Like, I'm sitting in the very corner. It's fine, not a thing to worry about. It was a lot of work to get this boat up and running, but it's floating like a champ. It's crazy. It's just made out of like house insulation and like fiberglass and epoxy and paint. It's crazy to think it just started as home insulation for like your walls like a couple weeks ago, and now it's this thing that's floating and keeping me afloat and gonna keep me safe in the night from the water. But yeah, this thing is awesome. It really is. And I like this light. It's a pretty nice little light. I'd be curious if it's going to attract a bunch of mosquitoes though. I have this that I want to test out. It's a little USB charger I have. You plug it in. There you go. Very cool. So I'll charge my phone off of this during the night, and then in the morning I'll plug in the solar panel again and charge up the battery. Beautiful. It's always fun to build things, especially things I've never made before. Like this was the first time I've ever really worked with that type of foam, or ever worked with like epoxy like that. I've never worked with fiberglass, and a lot of work and a lot of challenges and a lot of I guess figuring out things on the fly. But I'm really happy with how it came out. I'm just floating around in the water now. Caught some pretty nice fish today. Caught a huge sunfish. But yeah, it's a beautiful night, really calm. I hear crickets in the background. Got my little boat light on right here, and in the front I got the red and the green light going, and I'm just hanging out in my little camper boat. What a beautiful day. What a beautiful day. It is time to try our hand at some night fishing. I got these special bobbers, and they're special because they light up. I think they're gonna be pretty cool. I don't think it's gonna make us better at catching fish. I just think they're really sweet. Thread it on our line. Let's see what we can do. Let's go ahead and turn on our big flashlight. Oh wow, you can see there's like fog on the water. But look at that, there's some small fish down there. But yeah, let's I guess toss it over there and see what we can do. I'm gonna turn off this light though. Yeah, that's actually really cool. You see all the gnats kind of swarming around the light. Whoa! That bobber is pretty sweet though, honestly. Nothing yet. I'm gonna take the big flashlight and see what it looks like off the front of the boat. But it's crazy, there's just like steam rising from the water. I might want to actually move the boat up a little bit so I can kind of see what's going on up there. All right, take this. Let's drive a little bit. Hey, look at this. It's pretty cool. Man, there's like a skunk right here. I smell it so bad. At least I'm on the water. Can't spray me from that far. I should have just installed these lights on the boat. Let's go this way. Man, it's weird with the fog like that, or the steam rising off of the water. And you can see over here. Oh wow, you see that? That was a little muskrat. Yeah, you see him swimming there? He's right by that buoy. He touched the buoy. Look at him. Maybe he's running away from the skunk. All right, I think I'm gonna turn back around. I don't want to get too lost in the lake in the middle of the dark. Man, I love how this thing can turn on a dime. I just don't want to hit any seaweed. Driving this thing is a lot of fun. Oh, right here looks like there's a break in the seaweed. Okay, back in you go. Wrap it around. It is time to set up our sleeping situation for the night. And I brought a pretty nice sleeping bag because it is probably going to get a little bit chilly tonight. And I do have my little pillow as well that I blew up earlier. Yeah, it's been a while since I used this one. Oh, I like this sleeping bag. It's so much fun. Zip it up. get nice and comfy. This is nice. You can stretch out. Got the stars above me, and I got some bug friends as well. At least they're not the biting type. They're more of the just kind of hanging out with me type, which is good. I think it's time to just finally relax, settle down, lay down, and just take it easy for the rest of the night. Yeah, it's been a wonderful day. I'm excited to just finally relax, especially after the long time of building this whole thing and putting it together and then dragging it out here. And I want to say thanks again, Uncle Mark, for helping me get this boat out here, and thanks Chuck for letting me use your lake. Super awesome. It's the perfect place for it, and I super appreciate everything. I really do. Yeah, I brought the Steam Deck again. Baba boom. Look at all the smoke and fog just pouring off of the lake. That's wild. It looks like it's on fire or something. Beautiful. I think it's time to catch some sleep. I am tired. It's been a wonderful day. I'm literally just floating on the water in the lake, and it's crazy. It doesn't feel like I'm floating. This boat is just so stable and it's so much fun. But yeah, I think it's time to turn off our light. In the morning, we're gonna try our hand at fishing. We're gonna make some pancakes, enjoy a beautiful morning on the lake. So get some good sleep, and I'll see you then. Morning. Looks like there's still steam coming off the water. It's kind of chilly. And honestly, my sleeping bag, it's wet. It's all wet. Everything's probably wet. This is supposed to be a waterproof sleeping bag, and it doesn't feel wet inside, but man, the outside is just sweaty. Whoa, look over there. Very foggy. Even my glasses are wet. My sweatshirt. Throughout the night, I definitely heard a lot of splashing around, and there was a couple times where I heard scratching on the side of the boat, but I was too tired, and by the time I sat up, there was nothing there. I was thinking maybe it was the muskrat, but there were some noises happening all around. I slept all right. I was nice and warm in the sleeping bag, and there's still a lot of steam coming off the water, and just everything is so wet. It's crazy. Well, I think it's time to get up and make some pancakes in a minute. I'm gonna just sort of wipe off my sleeping bag, like up here, so everything's just soaked, crazy soaked. Oh, I should plug in my solar panel too. Hit the switch. Not a lot of sun out right now, but it'll still charge our battery up. A lot of steam on the water today. Very foggy looking. It doesn't look like it picks it up too much on camera, but in person it's pretty foggy. We got the sun poking out over there. We still got some like steam off the water. It's honestly a beautiful day out right now. It's starting to warm up already, which is nice because it was pretty chilly when I woke up. And we're just making some delicious pancakes floating on the lake in my little homemade camper. We caught 4 fish yesterday. I'm hoping to add 1 more check mark to that after breakfast. That'd be pretty cool. I think that these pancakes are going to turn out better than I thought. That looks pretty good. It's a little big for the pan, but we made it. Look at that. We got ourselves some pancakes for breakfast. Got some pancakes. I brought some honey. The sun's starting to come out. It's starting to become a really nice morning. Dip it in the honey. mean, look at this. Just eating pancakes in the middle of the water. It's a beautiful day. Whoa, I would stink if I dropped them. The dew on everything seems to be slowly going away, but everything was so wet when I woke up. It's honestly been a wonderful little adventure here on the little camper boat. This thing is comfy, it's awesome, it drives around perfect, and I'm excited to try to do a little bit more fishing before I head out of here. I'm definitely curious what those noises were I heard last night. I know some of them were fish, but the weird scratching that I heard along the side of the boat, I can only imagine it was like a muskrat or a turtle. Something with like hard nails or something like that. Yeah, that was interesting. Too bad I missed it. I wanted to know what it was. Might as well eat my pancakes with a view. Oh wow, there's a little fish right there. Just give him a piece. Do they like it? They're eating the little fluff. Oh yeah, he's biting it. That was delicious. Onward we go. I do like the sound the water makes underneath it. You can see how much water is still on top of everything. Definitely glad I put the battery box in this. And look how sweaty the boat is. At least fiberglass is waterproof. Yeah, so I'm thinking let's just head over to the other side and see what's up. Definitely more of a breeze today. If I don't anchor up, I'll just end up getting pushed. Fishy, fishy. Oh, hello. Is this little bluegill? We gotta up the list today. Where's my pliers? Tell me they're here. Hang out for a minute. Looks like he bounced off. Boop. I'm counting that as a catch because he was on the boat and I wanted to take him off and he did it for me, which was nice. There we go. He's a tiny one. Little fishy fish. Place him back in. The 6th fish of the journey. There we go. Look at this little guy. Go ahead. So far the little fish are out this morning. Just cruising along. Wow, it gets kind of shallow here. I don't know if you can see that. You know there's got to be like one monster fish in here that's like 50 feet long or something. I'm thinking there's got to be some fish over here. There we go. Ending our adventure on one more bass. Very nice. What a wonderful adventure. Beautiful day. Well, swim along, little buddy. Swim along. And it's time for me to swim along too. It's been a wonderful adventure. I hope you enjoyed. And I want to say thanks for watching. Hopefully you learned something. Just enjoy the adventure and journey with me. And I'll catch you on the next one. 8 fish. Not bad. Awesome.